Hi everyone, it's Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, as always, just a quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you always know when we're posting new content. So today's tutorial is kind of self-explanatory. There's lots of green, it's March, so we're making a St. Patrick's Day themed pin. It's going to be a shamrock, just like this one. And let me just briefly tell you what you're going to need to make it. As far as beads go, you're going to first of all need these checked glass beads, gemstone rondelles. They're made of glass and they're faceted on the sides. You're going to need 3mm fire polish beads. You're going to need 2 shades of Toho round size 11 beads. Here I have this antique gold and this gorgeous, a little bit of a rainbow finish green. And for some texture, I've also added some matte colored Toho treasure beads. The last type of bead that you're going to need is demi-round in size 8, and I'm going to be using the same shade as this antique bronze 11/0. When it comes to supplies and tools, you're obviously going to need a clutch to make your pin a pin. This is a butterfly clutch, it's very convenient. You're going to need one head pin. Here I have 21 gauge, 1.5 inches long pin with a ball for a head because I just think it's more elegant. And this is actually the perfect size, so 1.5 inch. Since it's bead embroidery, you're going to need beading foundation. Here I have Lacey's Stiff Stuff. You can also use other beading foundations if you like, but I do recommend white because we're going to color it in green. Further on, we're going to need some kind of stiff paper or cotton to put inside of the pin so that it's nice and stiff. I'm also going to be using just a regular piece of paper to draw on so that I can put my shamrock on the beading foundation later. And to do that, I'm going to need something to write with. Here I have this pen that I'm going to be using, and a green Sharpie with which I'm going to color in the foundation. You're going to need a needle to sew all these beads onto the foundation. Here I have size 10 needle, but size 11 or 12 will be fine as well. And some thread. Here I have 1G thread in green so that it doesn't peek through from in between the beads. What else? You're going to need glue to stick this together. Here I have E6000, ultrasuede to back it all up from behind, scissors, and some round nose pliers so that you can make a little loop at the end of this pin so that you can make the stem out of it. Okay, I think that's all. Let's start. The first thing we need to do is to make this shape. And I will enclose a picture, just a template that you can, print out or draw out from your screen. But actually the easiest way to get it right in scale so that all the beads fit neatly is just take the cap from your tube of beads. Here I have the tube of Toho Treasures and just a regular cap of this tube, and you just put it on paper and draw a circle around it. And now you take it again and draw another circle, slightly overlapping with the first one. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take a ruler and just put it against your circles like this so that it kind of goes through the 2 points of intersection between the circles, like that. And I'm going to draw a line that will be roughly half an inch right through there. So there's half an inch. And I'll just connect the edges of the circles with that point here. And here I have a sort of heart. And what I'm going to do now is just to make this a little bit softer in here. And I'm going to cut this out. And this is going to be one of the leaves of the shamrock. Okay, now that I've cut this shape out, I'm just going to round it up a little bit around the bottom. So that's one leaf of the shamrock. And basically that's how you design bead embroidery. Let's put it on our lacy stiff stuff. Again, I'm going to use the pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing this first leaf. So I'm just tracing the edge along the edge of the shape that I cut out, like that. I put a little bit of a dot over here, and two more. I'm going to try to keep some distance between the leaves because along these lines, this is where Toho 11 will be sewn onto the foundation. So I'm just doing this at some distance, just pointing the end towards that center that I drew. And the third one, and that's going to be my shamrock. Now I'm going to take my Sharpie and color this in green. You can also use colored pencils, crayons, if you will. And I'm also going to color out a little bit so that the white doesn't kind of peek from underneath the beads. So as long as you can see like the black line, that's okay. I can cut out the shape that I'm going to be embroidering in, and let's start. Cut off around half a wingspan of thread. So if you extend one of your hands holding the bobbin in front of you, that's half a wingspan, but honestly in bead embroidery you can use any length of thread that you like because you can always add some more. And now I'm just going to melt the end of my thread into a little ball and let's start embroidering. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to embroider along these lines that I made. So I'm just starting here, and for all the stitches that are available, we have a separate video on bead embroidery, so go check that out. And for this I'm going to be using the stitch in which I add 2 and go back through 3. So at first I'm adding 3 beads, 3 size 11 beads. You can just pull them all the way through so that you can know how much space they're going to take up. So it's going to be this much. And I'm going back through all 3 of them. And now I'm going to be adding 2. And going back by 3. So I'm trying to put my needle in between them on the line. And this is what I'm going to do for all 3 of these leaves. Pro tip, if you want this to be like super extremely even, you can only add 1 bead, and this is how you will get this very, very even edge. Like all the beads will align just perfectly. Here I'm adding 2, so it's not going to be as perfect, but it's going to be just fine. Before I go on with the other 2 leaves, let me just show you briefly how to make this nice point so that it's nice and pointy. So I have 1 more bead left in here, like that, and then the next bead is going to make a point. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through this first bead here, like that, and I'm going to attach it to the backing here, and I'm going to go right behind that last one that I added. I'm gonna go through it. Now I'm going to add that final bead in between them. I'm gonna go here again, like that, and it's already pointy, but I also wanted to be attached to the foundation here, so I just go out on one side of this pointy bead, go through it, and go back on the other side. So this is one of the ways in which you can make your embroidery pointy. Okay, I'll come back to you when I'm done with the outline for the other two leaves. Now we're going to start filling up the leaves, and I'm going to start by adding this rondelle faceted bead, but my thread is all the way in the middle and I want to add it here, so I'm just going to go in between some beads and just go along these beads so that I'm a little bit closer to where I want to be without, just leaving a large piece of thread on the back, because if I just went from here to here without going through the beads, my thread would just probably get more loose over time and the bead might get loose. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it in here in a way so that there's enough space around it to fit another row of size 11 beads. So I'm holding it down in this place that I want it to be, and I'm looking for the hole. Here it is. And I'm blocking it with one antique bronze bead from the top and just going back in the same place. Just to be sure, I'm going up again. I can just do it from here. Right like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round this bead with size 11O beads in antique bronze. And I'm going to be using the same stitch, so I'm going to be adding 2 and going back through 3. And again, if you need a more detailed description of the stitch, we have a whole video devoted just to that, so you can go to it. And I'm going to be adding 2 and going back through 3 until I've made a full round around this faceted green bead. Okay, what I'm going to do now is to add a row of Toho demi-round in between 5 Polish beads. So I am coming out with my thread around here, and I'm adding 1 5 Polish and 1 demi-round. And for this one, I would really recommend adding just 1 from now on, because it's just going to look nicer and more even. So I'm going back through both of these. And now I'll just add 1 5 Polish. And I'm just going along this line that I created with a round of 11 O's around that big green bead. Now I'm going to go back through this 1 demi-round and 1 5 Polish bead. And now I'm just going to add 1 demi-round. And back through the 2 last beads. You can obviously add both of them and then go back through 3, but this way it's just more even. And you have more control over the row of beads that you're adding. In total, you're going to add 4 5 Polish beads. Just like so. And as you can see, there's a bit of space in there, and I don't like that space. So I'm just going to put one antique bronze 11O in that space. Like that. Now I'm just gonna finish my thread since it's running kind of short. For the next row, we're just going to use Toho treasures. So I'm just going with my thread out in here. I'm gonna go with the treasures along this line. Again, adding 2, going back through 3, because these are just tiny seed beads, so you can use the more loose stitch. Starting with 3, and then I'm going to be adding 2 and going back through 3. So that's that, and now another row of this. So 1 5 Polish and 1 size 8 demi round. So again, starting from the edge and starting with 5 Polish. And that's the last bead in this row. You're supposed to ideally fit 5 Polish beads in this little semicircle, or a quarter circle actually. And now, depending on how you drew your template, your little heart in the beginning, you may have a little or a little more space left over here. And that's okay, and I'm just going to fill it up now, starting here with Toho treasure beads. And I'm just going to be adding them not in a row, but rather one next to the other. So the first one I'm adding like that. And the next one, well, Toho treasures have this property that they are not exactly even. So you can find more thin ones to later fit in this thinner space. So like in here. This one is a little bit thinner than the others. So I'm just putting it over in there. Just like that. You can also technically fill it with anything you like. You can put the 11 O's in there if they fit. You can put the demi rounds in it. It's basically a free-for-all. You can do whatever you like. I actually like this effect that this alignment of beads gives us because it's basically extra texture. It's not an exact row of beads, but it's a different kind of pattern inside this clover leaf. So don't worry if you draw your little hearts on paper and they're gonna be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. Like in this one, I didn't have to add anything at all in here because it turned out just fine. I just added a little bit over there. Now it's time to go here and add the big faceted bead, but I don't want to just go right here because the thread would go between the leaves and it would be difficult to maneuver around it when we finish the whole piece. So what I do is I go in between the beads in the row on the edge and just go a little bit down where I can safely put the thread to the other side. Like now I'm here, so I can either go back up this row, or you can just start right up. Again, I'll be finding my spot where this big bead can be, so that size 11O beads in antique bronze can fit around it. And I'm going to do everything the same as here with this leaf and this one. And I'll come back to you when I'm done. I'm done with all the 3 leaves. Now I'm just going to add the center of the clover, just to make it easier to finish later on. 1 antique bronze bead and 3 green 11Os to go around it. I'm just going to secure the middle one. So I'm going through it and just attaching it to the foundation. Alright, time to finish the thread and let's cut off the excess foundation. Okay, this is when you're going to need your cotton, and I'm just gonna quickly trace my pin on this paper. And I'm also gonna trace another outline a little bit to the inner side, on the inside of the shamrock, so that I know where to cut. And this is a margin that I'm leaving for finishing it with brick stitch later on, because going through the paper with the needle will be pretty hard. Okay, so now cutting this out. Okay, there's one more thing that needs to be done before we put some stiff cotton on the back and the ultrasuede. It's the tail of the shamrock. So I'm just taking this head pin, putting a single fire polish first, and then 12 green 11Os onto this pin. And you may notice that some of them may not go onto it, because like that's the thickest gauge that can still go through 11Os, but not all of them. Although they are uniform, some are wider than others and have larger holes than others. Alright, and now, first thing, you just bend it a little bit around here, and with your round nose pliers you make a big loop at the end, but also leaving some space over here, like that. It's a big loop, but it has some space before this last bead. And now what we're going to do is we're going to be attaching, keeping it straight just for now. You can bend it later. We're going to attach this loop around here. And we want to keep the space so that when we finish this whole piece, 2 beads can go on both sides of this pin. So I'm just coming in from this side, wherever in between these beads up front and back, just about anywhere, making sure that the thread doesn't go around the beads. So I'm gonna want it to be here, so I'm going through it, and I'm going to be attaching this loop in here by just going over it several times from different sides. So I'm starting here, I'm going through to the other side, and I'm going back just somewhere in the vicinity. and inside the loop, coming up somewhere around here, inside the loop, and just, it is going to be glued. I'm just going back and forth, maybe 6 or 8 times so that it stays in place. I can just go back and finish my thread. Now, you can do it later, you can do it now. You can basically just bend it so that it looks like a nice little tail. Now, taking that piece of cotton, adjusting it, making sure that there's a margin everywhere. Okay. Now taking my glue, spreading it evenly with a thin layer, because remember that the layer has to be thin, but it has to be everywhere. And carefully putting it on my pin. Alright, there will be more squeezing in a minute. For now, it's time to attach the butterfly clutch. And the first thing you want to do is take some rubbing alcohol or anything that is degreasing, and you just want to make sure that there is no grease whatsoever, because it's just going to adhere better this way. And once it's completely dry, you take a bit of glue, put it on that clutch, or on that plate actually. Again, thin layer covering all of the plate, and glue it. I would recommend somewhere here in the middle, so that the pin can be pinned like in this way, vertically, horizontally, in any way you like, and it will look good. And at this point I recommend waiting for a few minutes before you go on to sticking your ultrasuede on the back. If, however, you don't like waiting, just measure how much ultrasuede you're going to need. Cut it off so that it's enough. See where it will fit. And just poke a hole in the right place with another another clutch, because we don't want to move this one because the glue is still wet, but we need a hole. Let's see. Okay, that will be sufficient. So now again, time for some gluing. And make sure to coat this plate as well so that it holds on to the ultrasuede. And also leave a margin. So basically only cover the carton with glue, maybe just slightly over, because although you can go through the glue with a needle once it's dried, it's really a little bit more difficult and hard to go through with your needle. So I recommend leaving a little bit of margin. Now we can put on the ultrasuede. There is my hole. And just squeeze it tight. Alright, so now it's best if you leave it alone for at least an hour or several hours. One day is the best case scenario, but you have seen that I've prepared this one that's already dried. I cut off the excess ultrasuede and just try to cut off more or less at the same level as the beading foundation. And I'm going to show you how to finish on this one. Okay, for this I'm going to be using a full wingspan of thread, so if you extend both of your hands to the sides, unfolding the thread, that's how much I'm going to be using, because I don't really like adding more thread when I'm working the edges. Okay. So I'm just going in between the layers to hide the knot, or the melted ball of thread in my case. And we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. You can finish with brick stitch, as I've shown in my other tutorials on our channel. But this time I'm going to show you a different stitch. So basically you just take one size 11 bead, you go through in the same spot that you've started, and you go through this bead like so. So like you're going forwards. If you were doing brick stitch, you would go the other way, and also you would be starting with 2 beads. Here you're starting with 1, and you're going one by one. So I'm taking 1, measuring more or less the length of 1 bead, going out on the other side underneath these beads here, pulling through, and again going in through this bead from this side so that they kind of align together. And another one, just to show you what it looks like. Again, going out underneath the beads. And this is a good way of finishing the edge of your bead embroidery. If you won't need to attach anything to it, because when you're doing brick stitch, you have these beads going like this way with the holes going this way, and you can attach something pretty easily, and in this way it looks neat, but you won't be able to attach anything to them really. So this is a really neat way to finish your edge, and no thread is visible except for the back. So just continue doing this. I'll come back to you here to show you how to do these sharp angles. So meet you back here. Now when you've reached this point, when you more or less can add a bead on the other side so that they don't smush each other, and you would like to add a bead like in here, not to leave like a triangle. So you just go right in the middle over here, and right in the middle on the other side, like you normally would, and this will pop into that space. And now adding the next bead on the other side of the angle. Like that. And you just continue on with your edge. Now there's 2 more things that I would like to address. One thing is that I'm aware that you could also do this in a different way, namely going like you normally would, like this, and then just going down underneath the thread in this one, like that. So if you pull it, the effect is more or less the same. The difference being that the bead is like straight along, and these are a little bit aligned at an angle next to one another. So in this way, this will be just straight along the edge. And also my version of this is more sturdy, as the thread actually goes through the bead twice. But you could also do it that way to get a similar result. That's one thing. And the other thing is, when you reach curved areas, you will basically put your needle through very closely together, so not one bead away, but very closely together so that they're kind of spaced out correctly. Okay, I'm doing the rest and I'll meet you right here at the very end of the work. Okay, just one more thing to show you. I've reached this part with the tail, and now I'm picking up the next bead and going right on the other side. And I'm trying to go through as close to the middle as I can. So I'm in here. And I'm going to try to put that thread behind, and the other one is going to be in front. And I'm just going through the bead as normal. So that it looks like this. Now I just continue adding new beads. Just making sure my thread doesn't get tangled in this stem of the shamrock. Okay, just one more bead left to be added. So I wanted to show you how you close the loop when you finish the edge with this method. So I just added this bead, and as per the usual, I just treat this first bead in this edge as if I just added it, going through so that I end up in between the beads in this first embroidered row. And now I just make a double loop knot by going under the thread in between them and going through several more to hide the thread and the knot. And I can cut off the remaining thread. And voila, that's it, that's the pin. This is what it looks like from the back and from the side. And if you're not celebrating St. Patrick's Day, or you don't feel connected to it, you can make it in a different color. You can even make it with 4 leaves, so like a 4-leaf clover. Let us know what you're going to be doing, or tell us about your ideas in the comments. And that will be it for this tutorial. Let us know in the comments if you liked it. All of the products that I used here are available at eurekacrystalbeads.com. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!